frustrating, disappointing. And Dean Smith said it in the build-up to this week. It's all fine and good to go win at Old Trafford 1-0, but if you don't then follow it up with another decent performance the week after, it all feels like it's a little bit wasted, and this is not something that we can characterize as a good performance by Aston Villa. So I'm numbing my sorrows with a very nice Dalwhinnie Distiller Special Edition, which is a perfect Sunday afternoon drinking scotch when you're irritated and annoyed by your team. Let's dissect and try to make sense of Tottenham Hotspur 2, Aston Villa 1. Welcome inside a far more subdued Villa parlor this week. And before we get into Spurs, I do want to revisit one final thing from last week's big win at the Theatre of Dreams. And you've probably seen it 100 times yourself, but I'm going to show it to you again because it's a random fandom. And it is the growing and budding bromance that is occurring between everybody in the Villa fan base and Leon Bailey. Just look at how he and Danny Ings look at each other. And this is from last week.
Referee, whistle, referee. Ha! There we go, lovely. Well done, Villa.
How can you not love this guy?
Come on.
I mean, look at him. He's beautiful, for goodness sakes.
Up the Villa, yes.
And this is what happens when you have the kind of home debut that makes everybody instantly fall in love with you. All the supporters, your teammates, all of it. And I should say that Leon Bailey was desperately missed here today. They have Son, who could run down the left wing and cause all sorts of problems. We didn't have that today. And the one good thing about an international break, it gives guys like Leon Bailey a chance to get back to full fitness. Right, so here we go then with the big issues or moments that defined Tottenham Hotspur 2, Aston Villa 1, and I want to start actually with the statistical board because this paints a very interesting picture between these two teams, and I'm not going to use the same stats every single week, just the ones that I think are relevant, but you see the XG at the top there. The one that stands out, pass success percentage, 71 for Aston Villa. Look at the accurate passing in the opposition's half, only 98 by Villa to 173 by Spurs. And whereas Aston Villa was creating a lot of big chances in the first half, which they've yet to convert, look at the expected goals in the first half, 2-1 in favor of Spurs. Aston Villa has still not scored a first half away goal. They only have 2 first half goals all season, the one by Buendia against Brentford, and then the first half stoppage time golazo by Danny Ings. But of all the stats that you look at in this game that defines the tale, it's 71% pass success rate. Ouch. Honorable mention number 2, Spurs exploited Villa's back 3. And it was quite apparent, especially in the second half, that what Tottenham was trying to do was get in behind Cash and Target and run at Haas, run at Mings, make it difficult for them. And we saw that numerous times where they managed to get to the byline, hook balls back into the danger area. And that's Sonny's bread and butter, quite frankly, running from the flank and in. And it led to one of the goals, of course. And I know it's hard to change a formation and the personnel within that formation when you've had a good couple of games using it. But I just wonder in retrospect, and of course it's easy to do this, but if they were playing the 4-2-3-1 that they played and they won with last year at Tottenham, whether it would have been as easy for Spurs to prepare for them, because teams are preparing for Aston Villa now too. It's not just the other way around, Villa preparing for their opponents. And it really would be interesting to know what it would have looked like had Villa just gone back to 4-2-3-1 and not allowed that much space and time on the width. Honorable mention number 3 is Villa's attacking assurance. And there was a great example right on the hour mark, and I've brought this up in past shows, of how Aston Villa sometimes look like they're in two minds when they're breaking. And remember, this is a team that wants to be really ruthless when they win possession and quickly attack their opposition. And it was a nice ball played to Jacob Ramsey. He's now facing up. He's got Cash to his right. He's got Ings and Watkins to his left. And it just felt like he rushed a split ball between defenders that he was hoping Cash would run around and onto, but it was too straight and too heavy and straight to Lloris. And I just wonder in that moment, had he kept it a little longer and drawn the defenders and then played it wide, or if he had played it to Cash's feet immediately, because the runs of Watkins and Ings didn't look too convincing either. So they have to get this part right, and that is going to take time on the training pitch, and they're going to need everybody involved because Bailey, of course, is going to be a big part of transitional play. But they need to know what's going on when they're attacking as a 3-4 or even as a 5. You cannot simply rely on improvisation alone on every attacking move. And yes, Aston Villa has some very clever and creative players that can make things happen in the spur of the moment. Every single team in the Premier League has players like that. But you also have to have some foundation of patterns to fall back on. And despite the fact that Jacob Ramsey has been excellent, considering he's 20 and doesn't have a whole lot of Premier League experience, it's in this area that he still looks a little bit unsure on the ball. And in the example I just gave you, had he just hung on to the ball a little longer, drawn some defenders in, then perhaps he could play it around them to Matty Cash rather than trying to play through them, which was the wrong ball at the time, not helped either by the runs of Watkins and Ings again. And this is where we should watch very carefully how this particular aspect of the game evolves, because this is one of the reasons why they brought Aaron Danks into the coaching staff. That's his remit. It's attack-oriented possession, and he loves a crisscross, an overlapping run, exchanging of positions. And so let's watch over the course of the season if Villa look a little bit more fluid when those opportunities present themselves in the opponent's third. Big issue or moment number 3. Aston Villa could not build on a very promising start. Going into this game, we all knew which of the two sides were under immense pressure. It wasn't Aston Villa. Spurs, 3 losses on the bounce after 3 wins to start the year, although maybe not entirely convincing. They came off the Derby demolition at Arsenal, which was catastrophic and had their fan base and probably the higher-ups in a state of meltdown. So the start of this game was going to be absolutely crucial. And in the Gunners game for Spurs, they could not handle the press and they were overrun in midfield. And Aston Villa started precisely how we would have wanted and hoped, on the front foot, confident, chasing, harrying, pressing. They just could not convert any of that work into a big chance. And then as the game wore on, Spurs kind of righted themselves, and it kind of went downhill from there for Aston Villa. I'm not sure if you pick up on these things, but for me, the body language in the first 10 to 15 minutes of that match so heavily favored Aston Villa. They were assured on the ball. They were very, very coherent in their press, and they looked, very effective and energetic in that press, which made Spurs look very anxious and frazzled a little bit. And that changed the mood inside the stadium. The crowd became a little bit anxious. Everybody knew what kind of run that Spurs were on and the pressure that Nuno was under. The differences, though, in the games at Chelsea and Man United, Villa turned that early pressure into big chances. They didn't do it here. And the change in the game occurred in the midfield. Spurs started winning all the second balls, and a lot of that had to do, and this is an underlying theme throughout the game, with really poor and wasteful, sloppy passing by Aston Villa. And then when Spurs midfield started to get a hold of it, players like Hobier did not give the ball away cheaply. Big moment or issue number 2. Villa had a poor response after the 1-1 goal. They're called cliches for a reason, because they've been used an awful lot. And if you've been involved in football for any length of time, or if you've watched the game for a long time, you will know that one of the vulnerable times for conceding a goal is just after you've scored a goal. And statistically, I'm sure there's something somewhere to back that up. You just switch off. You think you've taken momentum away, and something in your brain says, we can relax for a moment. And this is exactly what happened. And then just before the 2-1 goal, A great example of very passive Villa play when Jacob Ramsey plays a hopeful ball to Ollie Watkins. It was never going to get to him. He's 1v2. And from there, it all kind of snowballed. And before you knew it, 180 seconds later, Villa were behind again. So the ball is too long for Watkins. He tries to win it back. It's played right through him. And then Cash shows up late. McGinn is played around. Ings is too late in the recovery run. The ball even gets played around Ezri Konsa. And then at that stage, that's Sonny's bread and butter right there. And you talk about defining moments in a match. This is it. 3 minutes after Aston Villa equalized, they just switched off. And by the way, the goal was great. I'd love to see that goal numerous times because we've seen it a couple of times. Great ball by Jacob Ramsey, who gets absolutely smashed after releasing it. Ings to Target. Target fizzes it into the edge of the 6-yard box, and there's Watkins. It's a fine goal, and that's what's so frustrating. All of a sudden, doubt creeps into Spurs' minds. The stadium's gone quiet. Aston Villa probably thinking, here we go again. We're going to win this game. And instead, the opposite happens. And the only good thing about that is Dean Smith now has a reference point to say, remember Spurs after you scored the goal because you switched off and that cost you points. And in my opinion, the number one big issue or moment in Spurs 2 Villa 1 is that McGinn is mercurial, which means that he can be unpredictable at times. And listen, I am not pinning this loss on John McGinn, and I would never pin any loss on one player alone. That's just not how the game works. But it seems as though there is an assimilation or a connection between an indifferent Aston Villa performance and an indifferent John McGinn performance. And let's be perfectly honest in this game, Tottenham's midfield won the battle. And that was clear. And in fact, both goals were scored by midfielders. I don't know what they're talking about. That was an own goal. Lucas Moura got the last touch before it crossed the line for 2-1. But the point is this. When Aston Villa is good and when John McGinn is good, he sticks his bum into the opposition. He receives a ball one way and switches play quickly the other. His passing is good. His passing is sharp. And when Villa is not good and John McGinn is not good, he is caught in possession. He makes wayward passes. He gives away poor fouls. And he doesn't hit the target when he has the chance to shoot. And I believe it's an issue that is worth exploring because everybody loves Meatball and perhaps they're afraid of saying it. But does he need to be challenged more in this squad? Or in his mind, is he always the starter? Is he always in that midfield? Because when it's not on, generally it's not on for Aston Villa as a whole. McGinn takes 2 fouls early in that game that I would call avoidable, and then the really sloppy stuff started happening. The poor passes, the getting caught in possession, just not being aware of what's around him. And one of those moments led to the 1-0 goal where McGinn just doesn't seem to know what's around him, or he's just not strong enough in that moment. And he has Tyrone Mings right there as well. Should one of them have just taken the foul as Mings had stepped up, which he was doing an awful lot in the first half. You noticed how proactive he was in the press in the early stages of that game to great effect. Didn't turn into anything. But my point is, he was pushed up. Villa were vulnerable when they didn't win the ball in that moment, and it winds up in the back of their goal. And then just prior to the 2-1 goal, McGinn has a chance again to maintain possession and keep Villa on the ball, and he just slips and falls down. And although that didn't lead directly to the 2-1 goal, there was possession changed in between that. But still, it just underlines my point from earlier. You've just scored. Try to keep the momentum by keeping possession of the ball and not giving anything away, because oftentimes teams are vulnerable after scoring. There was another giveaway in the 35th minute where he's just caught in possession on the blind side. We've seen this one a million times. You could see it coming from a mile away. Everybody holds their breath, and sometimes he gets out of those ones and Villa gets on the break. But on this occasion, he lost possession. And then on the hour mark after a Spurs corner, he plays a stray ball, and that turns into an Ndombele shot on target. And it's easy for me to look through and pick out all these mistakes and not put them in context on the wider scope of what kind of game he played. That's a little bit unfair. But my question is, and I'm guilty for even asking it, is what is John McGinn's ceiling? Is it here? Have we seen the very best of John McGinn? Or is there another ceiling or a higher gear that he's still to get to through time and through being experienced and consistent? He's still a young guy himself. Is it also the players he's playing with? Because he's playing with a very young man in Jacob Ramsey who doesn't have a lot of Premiership experience under his belt, and Douglas Luiz isn't a grizzled veteran either. So would playing with a guy like Morgan Sanson to his right with Luiz behind them maybe take some of the pressure off him of having to be razor sharp week in and week out? Because when he isn't, it feels as though Villa isn't razor sharp. This isn't nearly as much fun to do after a loss, but there have been some changes on the board that keeps tabs of some subcategories we're watching, including another away defeat. Villa have only earned 3 of a possible 12 points away from Villa Park. Positive, though, that Ollie Watkins finally got on the score sheet, bringing the combined goals tally with Danny Ings to 3. No set-piece goals for or against, which is amazing considering how many long throws, corners, and other free kicks that Villa were given in the Spurs game. And I'm not calling Tottenham a top 6 side at this moment in time. And as for the European endeavors, well, last week, Villa had taken off and they were climbing towards cruising altitude. Everybody had a free drink in them and things were feeling pretty good. This week, however, they've hit some turbulence suddenly, and hopefully Aston Villa can smooth that out again after the international break. Well, at least Aston Villa has shown that after poor performances, they have managed to bounce back, although coming off an international break is not necessarily the greatest, and let's hope everybody gets through that unscathed. Next weekend is also Thanksgiving weekend here in Canada as we welcome the harvest. It also means tournament football for yours truly, so I won't have a show, but we will, of course, talk about Wolves, Nuno's former team. And until then, be well and up the mighty Villa.